Welcome everyone. So we're going to talk about social value and sustainability in tendering, and hopefully provide you with some insight and useful information in relation to how to improve your tender responses in the main, and as a part of that, how to improve your business from a sustainability perspective to also, gear you towards winning more contracts. So I'll take you through this agenda quickly, and then we'll kind of get straight into it. I'll introduce you to the team. We'll talk about the importance of social value and sustainability, and the growing importance of that, particularly with a view to winning contracts. And then we'll go straight into a couple of examples. As we know, social value is quite a kind of a varied subject and very diverse. So we're not going to cover everything today, but we'll get into the detail of a couple of questions, in particular, a couple of social value themes. Then we'll sort of cover some ideas, initiatives about how to, what makes stronger tender responses as a result. And then a summary and what you can do further to that. So, Rhonda, would you just like to introduce yourself, and then Karen?
Yeah, and we're recording the call, so please don't reveal any company confidential information, if that's all right, because we'd like to send it out to people that haven't been able to make it.
Yes, all right. I should have also mentioned that if anyone does have any questions, you can just put your hand up in the chat, and we'll sort of do it. We don't necessarily need to wait till the end, but we'll have questions at the end as well.
Thanks, Matthew. Hi, I'm Rhonda Allen. I'm co-founder of SustainableX. We're a sustainability consultancy based in Hertfordshire, but we work across nationally. And we're really looking forward to sharing with you the sustainability side of social value and the tendering, and how complementary they are. So thanks for having me.
And Karen?
Coming.
Okay, So I'm Karen. I'm the operations manager at Complete Tenders. I've worked on many tenders across many sectors, and a very wide variety of social value questions and responses. So hopefully we'll bring some of that knowledge to this webinar today.
Sure. And I'm Matthew, Managing Director of Complete Tenders, and really we're here to support small businesses by helping you guys understand what it takes to win contracts, and anything that we can do to help you improve your responses, so that we all achieve our mission, which is really helping small businesses compete against the big boys out there and winning ultimately. So that's kind of why we're here. We want to give you as much information as we can to help you improve your chances of winning contracts. So firstly, I'm just going to cover kind of why social value, why is it important? I mean, to start with, it is really a fairly new phenomenon. It's only kind of been around for a few years as social value. Previously, you might have heard, and kind of done things in relation to corporate social responsibility, that kind of thing. And similarly, sustainability is obviously a key word, but it has many, many different meanings. So I think that the focus today is really on what is social value in relation to contracting and winning contracts, and small businesses. And what is now the case is that 10% of every public sector bid will be based on social value. So any contract that you want to win or procure through the public sector, you will need to answer questions on social value. Social value is a very varied and diverse sort of subject. So obviously that's part of why we're here today. But the key thing really is understanding that if you want to win contracts in the public sector, you're going to need to do something about social value. You're going to need to have a social value response. So the other kind of reason why social value is in relation to the public sector. The public sector are now committed to trying to achieve best value from every contract that they commission. And they want to see, they are beholden to the taxpayer ultimately, and they have to demonstrate to the taxpayer that commissioning a contract, whether it's surgical gloves, facilities management services, dentistry, whatever it is demonstrating to the community that it is worth having that, process outsourced, that service outsourced. They want to see the benefits to the wider community, and that leads us into some of the themes that subject matter is, the themes and subject matter that social value is about. Demonstrating the benefits to the wider community. The third kind of key reason why social value is perhaps the most important for a small business, and because it is 10% of every bid now, at least, it can be 20%, can be 30%, is that as a small business, it can be the best place, one of the best places to differentiate yourselves against the bigger competition. If you can demonstrate that per pound of your turnover, you are making bigger commitments than, a multinational corporation or a Mears or a Mighty in the, construction areas or whatever. This can be a key area where your bid, your tender, scores higher than the competition. So that is a key thing that I want you to try to remember today. Really, if there's one thing to take away, it's probably that, is that social value can be the difference between winning and losing a contract for a small business. So I think then that we just want to highlight the kind of the different themes of social value, and we know that there are a number of different kind of themes. Every authority, NHS Trust, local authority, housing association, Ministry of Defence, every tender is different. Every social value set of requirements is different. And therefore, kind of what to do and what to go about it again, is a reason why we're talking today. But it might be things like COVID-19 recovery. It might be economic inequality, jobs, skills, work experience, placements, that kind of thing. Fighting climate change, equal opportunities, workforce well-being. So we're going to delve straight into a couple of those themes now. Shall I share that first example? Yes, please. So if you want to crack on and get straight into that first example, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so I'll take this one. And as Matt said, social value covers such a wide range of themes and topics. And if you've tendered before, you've probably seen a few social value questions, and you may well have answered one on a particular topic. Let's say you've answered one on, like this one, well-being, and then the next tender comes along and you've got a question on a completely different topic. So it's not possible to have a social value response. You might have a service delivery response, you might have a quality management response, you might have a health and safety response when tendering. You can't have a social value response, let's say, that's one size fits all. So, and that's what these two example questions, so we'll do this one first and then the next one, tries to illustrate. So this one, and this is a common theme now, is about health and well-being. So this particular example has come from a security tender for a housing association. And what was key on this one is that very top part of this slide, they shared their values, considerations, specifications and requirements. So this housing association had some social value themes that were extremely important to them, one of which was health and well-being. And so they wanted bidders to demonstrate how they would address their priorities, meet what they were looking for. And they wanted to make sure that bidders talked about not just what they would do, but when they've done it before, make reference to examples and case study to support your response. So not only did you have to think about what you would do for this organisation, you had to support that with what you've done before.
So I think that's kind of also where sustainability can support, like having a sustainability framework can support you in some of these really difficult and different social value questions, because if you use a really broad sustainability framework like the Sustainable Development Goals, it has a whole goal on good health and well-being. And if you've considered that for your company or for your community or your employees, it might be something you could use as an example if you haven't done it before. So that starts to sort of bring in the links, I think, a little bit, would you say, Karen, between
absolutely
social value response and how you operate as a company and how you might be able to use that information. And you might not have a standard response, as Karen said, but you might have a bit of a framework or a tool that you could reflect on.
That's right, because usually when buyers are asking about social value, they want to know that as a result of being awarded this contract, what will you deliver in terms of social value? So quite often it's not necessarily what you're already doing, it's what can you bring to this community, which is where I'm going back to Matt's point about being a small business. Think local. As a small business, you're there, you're in the community, you're employing local people. It's a really strong point from the social value perspective. You're not a large corporate doing a cookie cutter approach to a new location and what have you. As a local small business, by giving you the work, that's already improving the local area. But you have to make sure you stick to the theme of the question each time. Just say, oh, we've done great stuff in this area, let's talk about that. Well, is that what the buyer's looking for this time? You have to bear in mind as well.
Karen, forgive me, I hope I'm not asking a really tough question for you, but is something like one of these questions, how do you measure it? Like, is that normally given in a tender, or is that something you have to magic up, the measurement and the evidence?
So
for something that's a bit difficult, like mental health or well-being.
So that very much depends on the tender and on the question. So questions on social value vary immensely, from wordy questions like this, tell us about what you'll do, to sometimes you'll actually get given a spreadsheet with a long list of potential initiatives that you can commit to. And then often in that spreadsheet, they will have how they're going to measure it, or they will assign a particular value to an initiative, so that when you've done all your commitments and outlined them all in that spreadsheet, at the end of the spreadsheet pops a number, often translates into a monetary number, and the higher number is a better score. So if you say you'll do you'll employ an apprentice, that'll get you X thousand pounds. You'll do work experience, that gives you another X thousand pounds. You'll spend so much money in the community, that'll get you another X thousand pounds. But talking about measuring, that's something that you need to be including in your social value response. It's not enough just to say, well, we'll do all this. Well, as you say, well, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to measure the impact of that? How are you going to report on that? How are you going to make sure that you do that? Because in public sector tendering, buyers are very risk averse. And that applies to social value as well. They want to know that, and hence, have you done it before? How can we be confident that you're going to say you're going to add all this benefit? Well, how can we be sure that we're going to get that? And that's where measurement comes in.
Yeah.
So I've got a question. So it's actually from Abby. What do we do when the authority is very weak on what they want as a social value response? So it's the opposite of this particular example where they were very specific. What do we do where they're not specific about their particular motivations towards social value, that kind of thing? Would we ask for clarifications? or would we put case studies in relation to what we have done in general?
Okay, so yeah. So in that case, the first thing I'd do is ask a clarification question to understand whether there are any specific priorities that council have. I'd have a look on their website as well if you can't find it on their website. But also have a look at the evaluation criteria for that question, because on a tender, every tender outlines the evaluation criteria. How are they going to score that response? You know, for all the questions as well as social value. And if it's not clear, you can ask that as well. How will the social value response be evaluated? Because if they're being very unclear, and sometimes they are, sometimes the question will be, give us 500 words on how you will improve economic, social, and environmental. And you're like, wow, okay, where do we go with this? So yes, ask first, and then
I mean, my comments would be they typically have a strategy, like a 5-year strategy, and I'd reflect back to that, have a dig around on a PDF copy in somewhere and see where their big topics are. Because if they headline with planet or they headline with people, there might be some ideas out of that. But
I would echo that in terms of even if the authority is vague about their commitments and their strategies, as the proposer, as the potential supplier, if you can be specific and measured and realistic and timely, and we'll come to the SMART kind of acronym. I've forgotten the A already, the one in the middle. But if you can make your commitments specific to that particular contract, then you're showing them that as a supplier, you can actually help them achieve, and even the procurement or department within the NHS Trust might not know what their commitments to carbon reduction is, or when and where their net zero thing is. But if you as the supplier can make your commitments to that, you can, it helps them. It helps to show them that you are very clear about your objectives and your commitments, for the benefit of the community in this contract.
We look at the next question, do you think?
Sure.
Yeah. So,
okay, so sorry, go on, Monday.
No, you go, Karen.
So I was just going to say, so the previous one was on health and well-being, and this one is relating to climate change. And climate change or environmental comes up very often in terms. This was an NHS contract for dentistry, and this one kind of refers to what we talked about before about making sure you're measuring and monitoring. Because this question, the way this is laid out, is actually a really good structure for social value responses in general. Describe what you'll do, how you'll do it, how it meets what they're looking for, timed project plan, when you'll do everything, and then how are you going to monitor, measure, and report. So whenever you're answering a social value question, bear this structure in mind. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? When are you going to do it? And how are you going to measure it? And it's particularly important with climate change and sustainability initiatives, because you might be saying, oh, we're going to invest in electric cars and we're going to operate in a more environmentally friendly way and so on. But how, and this is a question for Rondi really, how do you measure that those things are having an impact? So you've bought an electric car.
Yeah. I think especially on the NHS or any of these types of contracts and these answers is, if you have a carbon reduction plan, it's not just ticking a box, but having that plan. And the NHS is now asking for it to be published, and you send to them in their evergreen assessment the link of where it's publicly published, so they can triangulate that you have a governance around your carbon reduction plan and you have a plan of action of how to achieve it. And I think that provides evidence in your social value, because you can refer to that. In terms of investing in electric cars or solar panels, typically that's somewhere on the plan. For SME businesses, it's not something that they can afford or have the capital to afford to put that in immediately. But I think having the governance, and this is back to the method and how you're going to do it and how you're going to monitor and measuring it, having that annual process of doing a carbon reduction plan, or even looking at your sustainability in a really holistic and logical and a way, just like you would doing your accounts or any other sort of processes that you have in your business, or any regulations or ISO, feeds really well into the sort of a solid answer for these social values questions, because you know it's not a made-up thing, it's part of your business processes.
Yes, and I think with this, it's with something like the climate change social value responses, this is an area where you can't have a stock answer, let's say, but you can have a set of initiatives that you've worked on and have in place, so that when you're asked a question like this in a tender, actually you know where you were, you know where you're trying to get to, and you know what progress you've made, and you can talk about that, and you don't need to reinvent that every time. Now, they will be asking, for this contract, what will you specifically do? For this dentistry one, for example. So let's say you're setting up a new practice. How will you make sure that it's an environmentally friendly practice and so on?
And I think by having that internal assessment, you don't put in an answer that's absolutely off the wall, and it's realistic. So I think the assessors of these are seeing social value answers all day long, so they know where things are. Look, if you say next week we're going to put solar panels in and we'll invest in, it possibly looks a little bit ambitious, and I guess they sense that. So if you've done that internal assessment, you understand your own plan, you can be realistic, and it comes across as quite authentic, and it is authentic.
Yeah.
I if I can add, that really, yes, what we're saying is you need to be specific to that particular buying organisation and that particular tender and that contract bid, but there are systems and processes within your business, sustainable, making things more sustainable in your business, to have a set of commitments that you are, the next tender that comes up, that you could roll those out. Obviously, there is a balance between, doing a load of net zero stuff right now and the cost of that, without having the money coming in from a contract that you've won. But there are things that you can start looking at and, in principle, committing to should you win a contract. Certainly for NHS, we know that nearly every contract you're going to need to have a carbon reduction plan in place. So there are some themes that you can start, and of course there are the benefits of doing that within your business, providing that it doesn't cost, the cost is unbalanced. But there are obviously things that you can do on workforce well-being, equality and diversity that obviously benefit your business generally, without needing to win it, without winning a contract on, and obviously our discussion is focused on that part of it. But I guess ethically, you want to do these things to be a better business, regardless of whether you want to win a contract or not.
Yes, you should be doing it because it's the right thing to do.
I think so.
So just the way to win a contract.
And it has other business benefits, attracting other clients, attracting employees, and saving money. So definitely
win-win.
So yeah, any questions on that at this stage before we put our...
The questions in the chat have been around the vagary and the fact that the public sector is also catching up on social value, and half of the authorities and procurement officers out there probably still don't know what social value is, and they are asking questions about, please, can you give us, a response on social value and that kind of thing. So I think then it becomes research into the motivations of that authority. Look in the news as to what that authority has recently done. Look at, as Karen says, the evaluation criteria. Look, try to do as much research as you can on what whether that authority is particularly motivated towards workforce well-being, or dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19, or
job creation quite often,
job creation, skills, etc. And if you're, ultimately, if you're still blank, then put in a general response that covers all 5, 7, 8 themes, and define particularly your approach to how you're going to deliver those commitments. The authority don't just want kind of, finger in the air promises. They want to know how you're actually going to deliver it, and the proof of how you're going to deliver it. So that's how I would structure a very vague, a response to a very vague question.
I have a question, Matt. If the question is vague, would you defer to TOMS as a framework that's widely used?
So
is that your
yeah,
advice?
that's the one I'm referring to when I'm talking about the sort of the 5 themes, and of which there are then 8 sub-themes, is the TOMS framework. And any guess as to what TOMS is?
Themes, outcomes, measures, and supports, or maybe the S is just a plural. But I think where it is vague, then it's a real chance for you as a business to shine and demonstrate your strengths. So make sure your response covers who's going to do it, exactly what you're going to do, exactly how you're going to do it, and how you're going to measure it, and make them to your strengths to make the answer as strong as you can. If the buying authority doesn't have priorities and isn't clear about what they want, then tell them that you're the best at it.
We will circulate the links. So when we send out the recording of this webinar, I'll also send out the links to the 2 kind of main frameworks. It's a good point, Rondi. One is the TOMS one, which is sort of central local government social value framework, and then there's an NHS one. So again, it's probably worth both of those have the same themes, just in a slightly different order. So it's worth trying to cover all of those within a vague response.
Yeah, and there's just to add to the complexity, really, sometimes councils and buyers use what's called the social value portal, and that's you have to get a login to a whole separate portal where you outline what initiatives you will commit to, and that portal is how they actually measure it throughout the contract term, as well as putting your initiatives and commitments in there. That's the tool that's used to measure them throughout the contract. That's based on TOMS usually.
Yeah.
So just the key points, I suppose, Karen.
Yeah, we got that on that last
Have I not
slide.
Have I not shared? No. Okay. Share. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it sharing?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just writing an answer. So I just have one more question. Do you have to pay for the social value portal? No, you shouldn't have to pay for anything kind of related to social value. However, there are sometimes, in 2 or 3 instances in the last year, we have seen not necessarily, so for some framework related social value portals, they are asking you to pay for training to use the portal, and
that's not well. So if the social value portal is being used as part of a tender, usually you get an account for free in order to submit your bid. But then usually in the tender documentation, it outlines that there is a fee usually for using the social value portal. And that's related to the value of the contract that you win. So you're just using the framework, for example. So there's no guarantee you'll get any work, but they're saying if you get contracts up to say £100,000, then you pay 0.5% of that for fees for social value, but with a maximum of such and such a limit. This was done very recently for Bristol. So you're not paying to use it to submit your bid, but you do have to factor in the cost of that portal throughout the contract term. So unfortunately, that's part of the tender. It's part of the whole process, and the council that's decided to use that clearly outlines that in their material.
Yeah, so they're saying that they need to cover their costs of managing social value as this kind of side to a contract, because it involves separate public sector resources to make sure everyone is meeting their commitments on this and that kind of thing. So, you know, what I was talking about is I've seen a couple of instances that framework operators are, so rather than charging a percentage of using the social value portal, they ask you to be trained up on using their particular portal. That's only in a couple of instances, and the kind of the ethics or the morality around that is sort of questionable in my opinion. In obviously you're doing everything that you can and 10% more to try to demonstrate, you know, and win a contract and provide great services, and then you've got to also pay for training to use a portal that is being enforced upon you, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's probably a discussion for another day.
Well, good information. So just sort of key points to take away, to wrap up, before we take any more questions.
So, well, do we want to do questions first, and then we can do the takeaway points? Does anybody,
I'll stop sharing.
have a question? Do you want to put your hand up or put something in the chat?
Or unmute even, I suppose. Do you want? No?
Okay, no questions.
Okay.
Okay, well, shall I do the
Yeah.
the last?
Yeah, I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Sure. So we've covered the reasons why social value is sort of now very present, and why, you know, if you want to win contracts in the public sector in particular, you're going to need to have a social value response. You're going to need to spend time and a certain amount of resource in developing your responses in the same way that you would need to for the other 90% of a tender. We talked about the variety in the different themes. We've talked about the fact that every tender is different, every buying organisation is different. We've talked about how you can not have a single social value response, but you can develop things within your business that helps you become more sustainable, and develop some themes that you can roll out as and when you win a contract, or as and when you want to tender for a contract. You know, and then we've talked about those authorities that are quite vague about their requirements and motivations, is how to develop an appropriate response to that by doing sort of more research on and trying to dig deeper into and asking questions about their particular motivations. I did put in the chat the acronym SMART and how that is important in proving, and what authorities want to see is the proof of how, you know, it's not just a finger in the air commitment, it's how are you going to make it, you know, how are you going to achieve it, and make sure that you achieve it. So by making it SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, that, you know, and explaining those 5 points in a paragraph each, or, you know, 1 or 2 lines each, is a good portion of a social value response, whilst also then going into your responses. So those are I guess the key points to take away. Does anybody else have any questions at this point, or I'll just sort of wrap up with what to do if you have more questions, or have questions later? No? Okay. So if there is lots of advice and guidance on both SustainableX, on SustainableX's website and on our website, particularly in the blog section. Rondi, was there any particular place on your website that you wanted to highlight? Or
We have resources, but if we're really open to share, we've created lots of different templates and resources. So if anybody would like to reach out and just with a quick question, with no obligation for anything more, we're very happy to try and help and answer. So yeah, just do reach out. Our contact details are there. And also I'm really happy to expand my network on via LinkedIn. So please connect.
Sure. The same goes for us. As I said, we've got lots of advice and guidance on improving your tender responses, in what to do in terms of social value within tender responses on our website. And likewise, if you want to reach out to us at any time, if you've just got a niggling question about social value, or you want to cover a wider remit that includes sustainability, then please get in touch with any of us. Okay, and thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure. This is the first one that Complete Tenders have done of these, and hopefully we'll do more. But I guess it depends on your feedback about how well we've gone today.
I think we're planning on sending out a summary just to collate all these tips and tricks by Friday, I think. So expect an email from us at SustainableX or Complete Tenders, or maybe both, and we'll have access to the recording as well. Yeah, and we'll put those links into those 2 social value frameworks as well.